Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and you're on The Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. We are truly the crown jewel of AM radio. 77 WABC, the most powerful and influential AM radio station in America today. You, of course, can tune in at 770 on the AM dial if you live in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area where I grew up. But the good news is you can listen to 77 WABC worldwide by going to WABCradio.com, because we're live streaming in 173 countries worldwide. For the next 2 hours, we'll be talking news, history, style, food, and more. I guess 2 days after Donald Trump's conviction on all 34 counts in a Manhattan courtroom, I'm stunned, but I'm not shocked. In the early aftermath of the decision that he was guilty on all 34 counts, frankly, I felt numb. It reminded me of the day, even as a youngster, I learned that President John F. Kennedy had been shot. Time for a second stood still. And then the PTSD set in. The parallels between my own trial and the Soviet-style Manhattan show trial of Donald Trump are really striking. Turns out that my trial in a D.C. courtroom was the template, the prototype, the dry run for the conviction of Donald Trump in Manhattan. I remember very distinctly the raid on my home at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's akin to the raid on Mar-a-Lago, completely and totally unnecessary. Yes, I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning to a pounding of my door when 29 fully SWAT-clad FBI agents brandishing fully automatic assault weapons surrounded my home. They actually brought a battering ram up to my front door. I, of course, opened the door, looking down the barrel of 2 assault rifles. You see, they had also approved deadly force in my raid. I was quickly handcuffed and then perp walked out of the home so that the CNN camera crew, who had just conveniently arrived 15 minutes before the FBI arrived and 17 armored vehicles could get good footage of my humiliation. There was a helicopter overhead. As my friend Sean Hannity likes to point out, 2 amphibious units, those are boats, pulled up to the dock behind my house. I lived on a canal then, and fully armed frogmen jumped out on the dock. I guess they thought I was going to try to escape by swimming, but the truth is, well, I can't swim. The FBI refused to tell me what charges I was being arrested on until I was driven to the FBI processing center 2 hours away in Miramar, Florida. They also refused to loosen the handcuffs that were so tight on my wrists that they were cutting into my skin and beginning to cut off the circulation in my hands. My wife, who is extremely hard of hearing, actually virtually deaf without hearing aids, heard none of this commotion. She didn't hear me being arrested. She was jostled awake, looking down the barrel of 2 assault rifles as well. And then she was held at gunpoint for the next 13 hours, not allowed to make a cell phone call or receive one, while the FBI ransacked my home, seeking evidence of Russian collusion that, of course, they never found. Now I think about the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Same template. President Trump and his family were supposed to be there. It was only a last-minute change of plans that had them in New York rather than in Florida. And the authorization of deadly force that was authorized in the raid on my home and at Mar-a-Lago was, of course, completely unnecessary. It is extraordinary to realize the extent to which my case was the template, the prototype, the dry run for this conviction of Donald Trump, as I said. First, of course, there's the gag order. I know that I was imposed a gag order on by the judge in my case. In Trump's case, he's gagged in both of the 2 Manhattan trials and in the D.C. trial, in which the president is, like I wasn't, not allowed to defend myself. Only in Florida, the so-called documents case, has the judge rejected an abridgment of Donald Trump's free speech rights. In my case, one of the purposes was to limit my ability to raise money for my own legal defense. By that time, of course, we had lost our home, our savings, most of our insurance, and because of the gag order, my ability to make a living speaking or writing. Donald Trump, thank God, has been able to finance his own legal defense, but no one can win a rigged game, and no one can win a rigged trial. That's what we had here. In so many ways, my case was the forerunner. I requested a change of judge when the judge made prejudicial statements about me in front of the jury, just as Donald Trump requested a change of judge when it was learned that Judge Juan Merchan had not only contributed to Joe Biden's presidential campaign, but that his daughter, who is an adult and a Democratic political fundraising consultant, had made literally millions of dollars on behalf of her client, the Biden-Harris campaign, using this trial as the focal point for the fundraising appeals. Just as I asked for a change of venue in my case, President Trump asked for a change of venue, recognizing that the chances of him getting an honest and unbiased jury in deep blue Manhattan was virtually impossible. Yes, that was denied in both of our cases. Then there's the limit on your defense. In my case, since the entire case against me was based on the false premise that Russian intelligence had hacked the Democratic National Committee and that I had somehow taken the fruits of that hack and giving them to the Trump campaign, which of course the government had and produced no evidence of whatsoever, since it wasn't true, I still was not allowed to call CIA counterterrorism IT expert Bill Binney, who could have proved with forensic evidence that there was never any hack of the Democrat National Committee, not online, not by the Russians or anyone else. In this case, the Trump case, there's a fundamental problem in that the financial transactions of the Trump organization that seems to have been orchestrated by Michael Cohen himself had to, by law, either facilitate or hide some underlying crime. Well, those underlying crimes could never be identified. Bradley Smith, who is the former head of the Federal Election Commission, who had served as chairman, vice chairman, and general counsel to that commission, probably the country's leading expert on campaign finance, was not allowed to testify. Nor was Donald Trump or his defense attorneys allowed to present the fact that the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York had thoroughly examined these transactions and also come up with the conclusion that there was no violation. But as in my trial, those folks were not allowed to testify. Today on the Roger Stone Show, key trial witness Robert Costello, really a pivotal witness in this case, joins us with his analysis of the trial and the verdict. Then, of course, there is the question of the jury. 11 hours of deliberation for 34 counts. Experienced trial attorneys tell me that indicates that the jury was homogeneous from the beginning, meaning that the jury was 100% hostile, as they were in my case. Anytime you have a juror who has posted attacks on Trump on their social media postings, but insist in jury selection that they can be unbiased and impartial, well, you have to be deeply suspicious. I think, as many do, that this trial was rigged from the beginning, despite the fact that District Attorney Bragg could never produce the underlying crime. It was clear that you had a convicting jury. Now, what will the political fallout be? The Trump campaign has taken in $800,000 just since the verdict. I think that number is low. That was a number I saw as of this past Friday. I'm sure it has surpassed $1 million since then. So if you are tuning in to the Roger Stone Show, we're going to be talking more about the trial. We also have some other great guests coming up, including Christine Serrano-Glassner, who is the candidate that Donald Trump has endorsed for the U.S. Senate in the upcoming New Jersey primary. So I'm Roger Stone. Stay tuned, and I'll be right back with The Roger Stone Show.
This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is The Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. Joining me on today's show as well is Christine Serrano-Glassner. She has just been endorsed by President Donald Trump for the U.S. Senate in the June 4th Republican primary in New Jersey. She is, shall we say, not the organization choice. She's going to join us on the show today, as well as I will reveal my mother's very special recipe for eggplant parmesan, one of my dad's all-time favorites. One of the things that we've been doing here at the Roger Stone Show is highlighting some of the great recipes from my youth, from my mother's cookbook, which means they're really from my grandmother's cookbook. And as I've said on the show, I'm half Hungarian and half Italian from the waist down. And most of these recipes are either of those two ethnicities, and I'm quite proud of them. I'm so proud of them that I'm going to produce them in a 77 WABC radio Roger Stone cookbook, which I'm working on in my spare time, of which I really don't have much. Also joining us today on the Roger Stone Show is a former U.S. Navy Rear Admiral and head of the White House Medical Unit, Congressman Ronny Jackson. Now, Ronny Jackson was the physician for three presidents: George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, and President Donald J. Trump. He resigned as a Rear Admiral in the Navy to run for Congress in the 13th District of Texas, where he was elected in 2020, reelected in 2022. His interview today is most interesting because Congressman Dr. Jackson believes that Joe Biden should take a cognitive test, a mental acuity test. President Trump has agreed to take one, and he's challenged Joe Biden to take one. I think this is particularly appropriate in view of Jill Biden's appearance on The View last week, in which she said that Donald Trump can't string a sentence together. Maybe she missed his rally in the South Bronx. Perhaps she didn't see his rally in Wildwood. Perhaps she hasn't seen him emerge from the Manhattan courtroom to defend himself, but running through the raindrops of the legal restrictions on him imposed on him by Judge Merchan over the gag order. The idea that it is Donald Trump who is infirm, well, that is disproved every single day. I did see Andrew Weissman, who is the legal analyst for MSNBC. He said a couple of days ago that he had a man crush on Judge Merchan, which I guess means that Weissman likes judicial misconduct. But Weissman himself, who prattles on endlessly about the rule of law and can't really hide his hatred for President Donald Trump, began his own career covering up mob murders in Brooklyn. Sammy the Bull Gravano was never charged and convicted in as many as 22 murders with the help of prosecutor Andrew Weissman. And then, of course, there's the famous Enron case. That's where Andrew Weissman essentially destroyed not only Enron, but Arthur Andersen, which was at that time one of the largest accounting firms in the country, but they're out of business these days. Gone. Of course, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously overturned the Enron convictions, and a judge admonished Prosecutor Weissman for his prosecutorial misconduct. Then, of course, there's the fact that Mr. Weissman destroyed all of the cell phone memories of all of the Mueller prosecutors immediately after Special Counsel John Durham was empowered to investigate the origins of the Russian collusion hoax. The two-tiered justice system here continues to boggle the mind. I see that Hunter Biden is going to trial in the first week of June, but he's avoided most of those tax charges. Why? Well, because the U.S. attorney in Delaware let them expire. That's right. They let the time clock run out. Now, this is kind of personal to me. I continue to read online that my wife and I were allowed to evade $2 million in taxes, while Hunter Biden, the poor fellow, well, he's being prosecuted. Not really the case, folks. Yes, I do owe the IRS $2 million. 75% of that is interest and penalties. And as far as evading taxes, well, my wife and I made monthly payments to the IRS over our past due 2006 taxes, the only year for which we are delinquent, every month for, I believe it was 7.5 years, without ever being late on a payment. And those payments increased over time. So, yes, as a federal judge said when Hunter Biden tried to raise the question of our tax issues, which was a civil case, we reported every dime of income. Hunter Biden failed to report almost $10 million in income. As the judge in that case said, apples and oranges, not even remotely the same. The two-tier justice system continues. You remember the big legal fight over Richard Nixon's White House tapes, the famous Watergate tapes. He argued that they were his and that under the principle of executive privilege, he should not have to produce them. He did, however, produce a transcript of those tapes. Well, the Court of Public Opinion and the Supreme Court ruled against him, putting aside almost 200 years of legal precedent regarding the principle of executive privilege. And all of those tapes were released to the Congress, to the Watergate special prosecutors, and to the public. Now, however, the Biden Justice Department is refusing to release the audio of the taped interview that President Joe Biden gave to Special Counsel Robert Hur. Now, they've released a transcript. That's the same thing Nixon did. And guess what? The Biden Justice Department is claiming executive privilege. Can't have it both ways. What is it about those tapes that they want to conceal? Could it be that Joe Biden sounds erratic, angry, amped up, or confused? Hopefully, we will find that there's one system of justice, and they will release that tape for the American people to hear. We've got a full show for you today, folks, so buckle your seatbelts. And as the late, great Jackie Gleason would say, away we go.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. We are the crown jewel of AM radio, perhaps the most powerful and influential AM radio station in America. And we're happy to have you tune in this Sunday afternoon. My guest now is Robert Costello. He is a former federal prosecutor, now in private practice. He specializes in criminal and commercial litigation. He is very familiar with federal investigations and administrative law in the city of New York, and he practices with the firm of Davidoff, Hutcher, and Citron. Among my friends who are lawyers, he's extraordinarily highly respected. As many of you may know, he was an important witness in the trial of Donald J. Trump in front of Judge Juan Merchan in the so-called hush money case. And we're very honored to have Bob Costello with us today. Mr. Costello, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you very much.
Give us your reaction to the conviction on all 34 counts after only 11 hours of deliberation. What do you think?
Obviously an unjust result. My first reaction was shock. I fully expected a hung jury only because of the Trump derangement syndrome, which exists in Manhattan. And unfortunately, this jury was persuaded, I think, by the judge's erroneous instructions. Particularly the one that comes to mind right off the bat with me is the one that says, and I'm looking now at the written instructions, although you must conclude unanimously that the defendant conspired to promote or prevent the election of any person to a public office by unlawful means, you need not be unanimous as to what those unlawful means were. This judge has taken years and years and years of precedent and thrown it down the toilet. It is a basic requirement that every element of a crime be proven unanimously to the jury. In this case, the real crux of this was the alleged misdemeanor offense of filing a false business record had to be enhanced into a felony if you can prove that covering up that, making that false statement on a business record was designed to cover up another crime. The only problem was the indictment didn't specify what the other crime was. So how does Donald Trump and his team defend against something that's not specified? I believe that even the prosecution didn't mention any possibilities of what the crime was until after the close of evidence, in which case they then said there are three possibilities. One is a federal election offense, two is a federal tax violation, and three was a New York State election offense. Well, the first two, since they're federal violations, this court had no jurisdiction over. So that couldn't be one of the predicates for turning this misdemeanor into a felony. The jury, as I understand it, when they filled out their jury form, they did not specify any of the three alleged covered up crimes. So we don't know what it is that they found, if they found it at all. And the other thing is, we don't know whether they were unanimous for one crime or two or three, or not unanimous for any one of them. They might have been split 4, 4, and 4. This is absolutely intolerable. It comes to mind, red light, full stop. This case cannot withstand an appeal. The only problem is, it seems clear to me that the Democrats and the Manhattan DA's office and the judge did not care whether this case, this verdict, would withstand an appeal. All they wanted was the verdict now before the election, and if it gets reversed after the election, they could care less. And that's really a travesty. And by the way, when I say that's one point, there's probably 15 other grounds upon which this verdict will not stand. All of the Stormy Daniels stuff, the Karen McDougal stuff, the AMI statement, grab them by the you-know-what, all of that stuff has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not Donald Trump instructed anybody to make a false entry in a record of the Trump Organization or any other Trump group that he drew the checks on. So there's just so many, maybe 10 different grounds to reverse this on appeal. But it won't happen until after the election. That's the sad.
Is there any mechanism in which an appeal could be made directly to the U.S. Supreme Court on a due process question?
Honestly, I don't think I'm capable of answering that question. You really need a constitutional appellate scholar on this. And that's something that Donald Trump should be investigating right now, because there are issues of enormous importance here. Ultimately, this case is going to get thrown out. But he needs it to be thrown out sooner rather than later. And frankly, off the top of my head, I don't know of a way to do that.
I found it shocking when the prosecutors called Keith Davidson, the attorney who negotiated the nondisclosure for Stormy Daniels. Mr. Davidson was arrested in a sting by the FBI as part of a gang that was seeking to extort Hulk Hogan over a sex tape. When the blackmailers first went to Hogan, he went directly to the FBI and reported what was going on, and they ran an undercover sting operation, and everybody involved, including Davidson, was arrested. Then everybody else in the case got prosecuted, but Mr. Davidson was not prosecuted. Shortly thereafter, his name began to be redacted in the government's filings in that case. We had my good friend from Bubba the Love Sponge, Bubba Clem, popular radio host, who himself got involved in that whole thing, although in an innocent capacity, made this case on the Roger Stone Show several weeks ago. But Trump's attorneys knew that Davidson had essentially given them all of his emails and all of his transactions with Cohen in return for non-prosecution, probably agreed to testify in return for non-prosecution. Seemed to me like a missed opportunity. I'm sure there were other missed opportunities. I was a little surprised that the judge, and this happened in my case, would not let Bradley Smith, the former chairman, vice chairman, and general counsel of the Federal Election Commission, probably the country's leading expert on the federal election law, which is relatively detailed and convoluted, would not allow him to testify. Yet at the same time, they try to imply that there's a violation of federal law. I saw this as one of the major, as a non-lawyer, I saw this as one of the major flaws in the case.
Well, as a lawyer, I can tell you you're right. And I sat there all day on Monday with Bradley Smith because the two of us were being moved from the jury room to the alternate courtroom, from the alternate courtroom back to the jury room. And he was there ready to testify and wasn't allowed to. And yet this jury was instructed that one of the possible violations is a federal election law violation over which New York courts have no jurisdiction. And the witness was there to say that there wasn't any violation, even if they had jurisdiction over it. So you're absolutely right. That's another grounds for appeal, another firm grounds for reversal. There are so many, quite frankly, you need a laundry list to write them all down. The testimony of Karen McDougal about Karen McDougal should not have been allowed. Stormy Daniels should not have been allowed. The AMI stuff shouldn't have been allowed. That has nothing to do with the entry of a false record. But it was put in there to muddy the waters, to inflame an already predisposed jury to engage in the Trump derangement syndrome. This guy's guilty no matter what the evidence says or doesn't say. And it's clear that that's exactly what they did. And I'm concerned by the fact that they had two lawyers on this jury, because you have to ask yourself the following question during jury selection. Why would two lawyers not want to try and get out of this trial when they know that this is proposed as a 6 to 8 week trial? So that's 6 to 8 weeks they're going to be going without billing any clients. Now, what lawyer would be willing to do that? You have to ask yourself. Perhaps somebody who says, I think Donald Trump is a terrible guy, and I want to be part of that historic trial to vote for his conviction, no matter what the evidence says. That's what I worry about. Plus, two lawyers like that, they get into the jury room, and you know that they're going to dominate that conversation. The rest of the jurors, the non-lawyers, are going to look to them for advice, even though they shouldn't, even though they're instructed by the judge, that it's the judge who gives them the law, not the lawyers in the jury room. There's all sorts of problems with having lawyers like that on a jury, but that's the jury that we had.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with Robert Costello, one of the most respected criminal and civil defense attorneys in the country, widely respected certainly in New York, and who, of course, was a witness in the recent Manhattan trial of Donald Trump before Judge Juan Merchan. Bob, the fact that the judge gave a campaign contribution to Joe Biden's presidential campaign, the fact that the judge's adult daughter is a Democrat political fundraising consultant who was using this very trial as the focal point of her fundraising appeals for the Biden-Harris campaign, among others, these seem to be obvious grounds for the judge to recuse himself. Yet he has refused to do so. Is that potentially an issue on appeal?
Well, it's certainly an issue on appeal. But frankly, I can tell you from past experiences, I don't think that the fact that he failed to recuse himself is going to win the day. But there are so many other grounds in this case for reversal that I don't think you really have to worry about that. I think the judge's political contribution to Biden was very small. And I'm sure that his fellow Democrats on the appellate division will just ignore that, say that it was de minimis. You have a much better argument with respect to the daughter and what she's doing and how she raises money on the basis of this trial. But I think that, quite frankly, there are better grounds for appeal than this particular area. Although, by the way, if he was being fair, you're absolutely right. He would have recused himself. But ask yourself the following question. With so many full, when I say full, I'm trying to distinguish between an acting Supreme Court judge, which Merchan is and has been for quite a number of years. There's so many regular Supreme Court justices who hear criminal cases. And these cases, these big trials are supposedly selected out of a wheel on a random basis. What do you think the odds are that Juan Merchan wound up with the Weisselberg case, followed by the Trump case, and guess who his next case is? Steve Bannon. I mean, it is clearly a setup. The DA's office somehow engineered this. I don't know how they did it, but they engineered this because they wanted Juan Merchan, because they knew Juan Merchan would do things like instruct the jury that they didn't have to be unanimous about which predicate felony was being covered up in order to secure a conviction here, because they were looking to secure a conviction by any means necessary, and they don't care if it stands up on appeal. It's not a matter to them, because this is all part of an election ploy. This isn't real justice and a real criminal case in Manhattan County. This is a case designed to get the maximum political impact for their particular party. And that's absolutely wrong. That shouldn't be practiced by the Republicans, the Democrats, conservatives, liberals. It doesn't matter. That kind of stuff shouldn't be tolerated.
I've seen this one before when I was charged with lying under oath to Congress in my voluntary testimony regarding Russian collusion that never actually took place. And by the way, to violate the False Statements Act, your statement has to be willful and has to cover up some underlying crime, of which there was, of course, none. Prosecutors argued that I had to be tried in front of Judge Amy Berman Jackson who had sat in the Paul Manafort trial and incarcerated Manafort for over a year before he was actually convicted of any crime, because they said my case was a related case to a case they had filed against 17 alleged Russian intelligence assets who they insisted had hacked the Democratic National Committee. But here's the kicker. They promised the judge that in my trial, they would produce evidence gleaned from the search warrants in that trial. But they never did, because it doesn't exist. And in fact, they never even got to discovery in that trial. So it was judge shopping, which of course they completely got away with. It really makes you question the system. D.C. and New York, I'm convinced, certainly when I say New York, I mean New York City, very difficult for anyone who is not a Democrat, anyone who's a free thinker, anyone who has unpopular locally political views to get a fair trial. I think it is almost impossible. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Robert Costello, a former federal prosecutor, now a criminal and civil defense attorney, very, very highly respected in the New York legal community. We're very lucky to have him and his unique perspective on the trial that has just passed. I tell you again, folks, if you want to hear this and play it for your friends, you're going to want to go and get the 77 WABC radio app. You can get that in the App Store on your cell phone so you don't miss any of the great programming we have here at 77 WABC, including this groundbreaking interview with Robert Costello. We're going to take a quick break for a commercial, but then we'll be back with Mr. Costello to get some more of his observations about this travesty in Manhattan. I'm Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. This is The Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. We're talking to Robert Costello, who was not only a witness in the just passed trial in Manhattan of President Donald J. Trump on the so-called hush money issues, but is one of the most respected criminal and civil defense attorneys in the country, as well as in New York City. Bob, I had my own extensive dealings with Michael Cohen. I met him in 2012 when I was working for Donald Trump. He had set up a draft Trump for President website, kept assuring Donald Trump and myself that he was collecting literally millions of email addresses on that site. We asked him for those repeatedly. He never gave us any because, well, he never collected any such thing. 2012 was not the year for Donald Trump. 2016, I'm convinced he turned out to be exactly the right man in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. America was tired of political institutions, no longer trusted the media, down on both parties, down on career politicians. The timing was exactly right for the election of the most improbable president of my lifetime. I've known him, he hates it when I say this, 45 years. First meeting him when I was working in New York for Governor Ronald Reagan's presidential campaign, when he and his father Fred signed up to become members of our finance committee. Every time I tell folks how long I've known him, the president keeps saying, that makes me sound old. Can't you just say we're old friends? So I try to do that. I realize you may have some restrictions, but your view on Michael Cohen?
Michael Cohen is a person who only tells you the truth when it's in his personal self-interest. Otherwise, he lies with impunity. I know this, and frankly, I believe that on April 17th, 2018, when I first met him in the conference room of the Regency Hotel with Jeff Citron, my partner, who knew him for 10 years, Cohn told us that he was suicidal because of the search warrants that had been executed on his home and his office, and he was desperately seeking a way out of the oncoming legal problems that he saw for himself. And my obligation was to tell him what his options were. That's what he kept on saying. What's my escape route? Now, this is a man who's so desperate that he's willing to kill himself to get out of his legal problems. I think that's the one moment in time that even a person like Michael Cohen is going to actually tell you the truth. And I said to him that it's quite clear that what the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing, and I used to be deputy chief for the criminal division of that office, I said, you are simply a bump in the road. I said, they're going to run over you in order to get to Donald Trump. So the issue, you keep on saying, what's my escape route? How do I get out of this? I said, Michael, there's a way out of this that I could have your legal problems solved by the end of the week. But what you need to do is you need to cooperate with the Southern District of New York by providing truthful evidence against Donald Trump. Now, if you don't have truthful evidence, it's a dead story. It's going nowhere. And if you think that you can go down there and tell these people half the truth or 3/4 of the truth, you're making a big mistake, because these are some of the smartest lawyers you're ever going to run into in your life, and they will quickly figure it out, and you will burn bridges at both ends. So I have to ask you now, having given you those rules of the road, do you have anything truthful, and it's got to be truthful, Michael, on Donald Trump? And remember, I'm sitting there with a guy next to me who knows him for 10 years, and he says, quote, I swear to God, Bob, I don't have anything on Donald Trump. Now, I approached that same subject over the next 2 hours, probably another 10 different times from slightly different angles, to see if I was going to get a consistent statement out of this guy. And I did. Every single time I asked him the question, he said the same thing. I swear to God, Bob, I don't have anything on Donald Trump. Now, at the same time, he would be pacing back and forth on the other side of the conference room table, and he'd stop because he knew Jeff, my partner, next to me very well for 10 years. He'd slam his hand on the conference room table, and he says, guys, I want you to know I will do whatever the F I have to do. I will never spend one day in jail. He must have said that 10 to 20 times. So that gives you an idea of his mindset. This is a guy who's suicidal. This is a guy who says, I'm willing to do anything. I will never spend a day in jail. And I've explained to him that if you had truthful information, that would be the route you could take, and you'd be finished with your legal problems this week. And he said, I swear to God, Bob, I don't have anything on Donald Trump. Don't you think at that moment in time, even an inveterate liar like Michael Cohen turned out to be, is going to tell you the truth because it's in his personal self-interest to do so? It would get him out of his legal problems. But he didn't take that route because, in my opinion, he didn't have any truthful information on Donald Trump. And he went on to explain that the whole theory here of paying Stormy Daniels and all of that was Michael Cohen's idea because he had been contacted by the lawyer for Stormy Daniels. Remember, when Donald Trump got elected, he took all of his inner circle entourage down to Washington, except for one person, Michael Cohen. They had the good judgment to leave him behind. Michael Cohen was very resentful of that and was desperately looking for a way to ingratiate himself with Donald Trump. When he got that call from Stormy Daniels' lawyer, the light bulb lit up in his head, and he said, this is the way I can do it. I will take care of this problem. And then at a later date, I will go up to Donald Trump and say, boss, you would have had a big problem, but I took care of it, me, Michael Cohen, because he wanted to get back into the inner circle. That was his motivation, as I understood it. Through the many phone calls, I think the government or the defense lawyers said there were 70 phone calls between Michael Cohen and myself over this period of time. I think that's what his motivation was. Michael Cohen was looking to ingratiate himself with Donald Trump to get back into the inner circle, and he was very resentful that he had been kept out. So now Remember, I will do whatever the F I have to do. I will never spend one day in jail. He spent more than one day in jail. And who do you think he blames for that? Donald Trump. And why do you think he writes his second book and calls it Revenge? I mean, that's really a game plan. And I explained this to the DA's office before I went to the grand jury more than a year ago. I did it in private because I said, listen, your office has a good reputation. Don't ruin it by trying a case with Michael Cohen as your chief witness. The guy is totally unreliable. I explained to them that I had made the same presentation to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York after Michael Cohen waived the attorney-client privilege because he accused Rudy Giuliani and myself of conspiring to obstruct justice by tampering with a witness, namely Michael Cohen. This was the story they were sneaking out to the newspapers, that we dangled a pardon in front of Michael Cohen to keep his mouth shut. It was exactly the opposite. In fact, the first time I met him, I was suggesting, if you have truthful information against Donald Trump, that's your way out of this. It's exactly the opposite to what the DA's office was telling this jury and what they told the grand jury before that. So I am convinced that Michael Cohen engineered all of this for his own benefit because he was trying to get back into the inner circle. When he didn't get back into the inner circle and when he went to jail, he decided Donald Trump was going to pay the price for this. And you saw the result of that yesterday.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Let me thank my very special guest, Robert Costello, one of the most respected criminal and civil defense attorneys, a former federal prosecutor, a man of great integrity. I thank you, Bob, very much for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
You're quite welcome.
This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
You're tuned in to The Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. We are the crown jewel of AM radio. My guest now is Dr. Ronny Jackson. He is currently a congressman from the 13th District of Texas. He is a retired Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy. And for 14 years, he served in the White House Medical Unit, ultimately rising to the head of that unit and essentially serving as the personal physician for three presidents: George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, and President Donald J. Trump. Ronny Jackson was elected to Congress in 2020. He has an amazing life story. He has a new book out, which I commend to you. It's called Holding the Line, A Lifetime of Defending Democracy and American Values. And Congressman and Dr. Jackson, I'm not given to long introductions here on the show, but yours merits a word or two. You were raised in Lellaville, Texas, where the congressman learned the value of family, faith, and hard work. After working as a roustabout in the West Texas oil fields, Ronny Jackson paid his own way through undergraduate school at Texas A&M. Following graduate school and medical school, at the University of Texas Medical Branch, he began active duty service in the United States Navy. With unique training in underseas medicine, he utilized his talents while deployed with the Navy divers, explosive ordnance disposal teams, and Navy SEALs, was assigned from locations around the world, from Panama City to Sicily, Italy. Dr. Jackson would later complete his residency in emergency medicine, finishing the top of his class. Therefore, he was deployed to Iraq, where he served with the U.S. Marines to lead resuscitative medical efforts on the battlefield for Combat Surgical Shock Platoon. While serving in Iraq, he was called back to Washington. As we said, he spent 14 years in the White House Medical Unit. Congressman Jackson, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate you having me.
So people may not realize it, but as the president's physician, regardless who's president, you are with him anytime he leaves the White House. If he goes across town, you are with him. If he's on Air Force One, you are with him. If he is on Marine One, the presidential helicopter, you're required to be with him. You're with him essentially anytime he leaves the White House. So you know Donald Trump, the man. You've spent a lot of time with him. I've known him 45 years. I try to explain him and describe him to people, but sometimes it's difficult. He is his own man. He marches to his own drummer. He's a man of enormous courage and stamina. But tell us about the Donald Trump that you know.
Well, I have a just unbelievable respect for the man. I really do. And I didn't know him when he came to the White House. Obviously, I was on active duty, and I was the senior physician. I'd been there, as you said, during the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and I was initially planning to leave at the end of the Obama administration because I had already I was already a Navy admiral. I already had 20 plus years in. I was looking to get out and, make a little bit of money or something, because I, hadn't had the opportunity to do that so far, in my career. So I was kind of getting ready to get out, and I was talked into staying by some of the folks that were on the Trump transition team, some of which who knew me from the Bush administration, and I'd taken care of them and their families as well. And they had trust and confidence in me, and they wanted me to stay. So they talked me into staying, and I told them I'd stay for a few months until I could find a replacement that they were happy with, and then I was going to move on. But you know what? I got to know President Trump really quickly. I got to know him faster than anybody in the White House that didn't know him at the time. And one of the reasons is because I was the first one to see him every morning, the last one to see him every night. And as you described, I traveled with him every time he went anywhere. I was at his side just a couple of minutes from where he was at, no matter what he was doing. And what I found in President Trump is I found a man that like you said, he's a leader. I mean, he's a true leader. He's aggressive. He's opinionated, but he listens to others. But he has incredible instincts, Roger. I mean, I've just seen this man before where he knows something is the right thing to do, and he will have every political consultant and everybody from the West Wing and everybody from the Pentagon and all these people that may have some stake in the matter, all in the Oval Office with him, and they'll all be making the argument why it's not politically the right thing to do, or it's not advantageous to him right now. There'll be a better time later, or something he should forget about or not consider, or so on and so forth. But you know what? If he thinks it's the right thing to do, there can be 99 of 100 of them in there telling him that he shouldn't do it, and he'll do it anyways. And I've seen over and over and over, he's always right. His instincts are always right, and it turns out to be the right decision. And everybody comes back later on and says, you were right, we were wrong, and that worked out really well, and that was the right thing to do. And you just don't come across people too often that have that incredible instinct. He's a great people person. I mean, if you get to know him, this Roger. He's a joy to be around. He's easy to talk to, and I learned to love the man really quickly. And I positioned myself to get to know him. I've been around the White House long enough to know that how to do that. And so I, have an earpiece in my ear every day. I listen to Secret Service traffic, and they call out every movement of the president when he goes to the bathroom, when he moves from one room to another. They call out every movement, and his call sign was mogul, and so they'd call out, mogul moving here, mogul moving there. And so I'd get to work in the mornings early on, and President Trump's up for probably 3 hours before anybody else shows up in the West Wing to come to work. He's upstairs, watching TV. Back then he was tweeting, and talking on the phone. And he's involved in a lot of stuff before he even comes down in the mornings, before anybody else shows up. And I would be in my office, listen to the radio, and I would hear mogul moving to the elevator. So I would get up from my chair and I would walk to my office door, and my office is directly below the president's bedroom in the White House. And my office door is directly across from the elevator that comes down from his bedroom. So I would stand there in the door, and the president would come out, and I'd say, good morning, Mr. President. And he'd say, morning, Doc. And he'd walk over to me, and he was looking for somebody to talk to by that time, right? And he would say, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And it's never anything medical related. It was just whatever's going on in the news. And I'd say, yes, sir. And we'd start talking, and he'd say, walk with me. And so I'd walk him to work in the mornings, and I'd walk him down the West Colonnade, walk him down the Oval Colonnade into the back of the Oval Office, and we'd finish up our conversation. And, whoever was out in the outer Oval, whether it was the CIA briefer, the National Security Advisor, or the Chief of Staff, or whoever's out there, they'd wait, and I'd walk out. They'd walk in as they would start. But I really got to know him really well, and that few months that I was supposed to be there came and went, and I never considered for 1 second of leaving the White House. I I realized that this was the best president that this country's ever had, and that it was an unbelievable honor and privilege to get to work for him. And I still feel that way today. I love the man, and I think that he's the best president we've ever had, and I'm looking forward to him being president again.
What's most amazing about Donald Trump is his toughness. I mean, I worked for Richard Nixon. He's a very tough guy. I worked for Senator Bob Dole, one of the greatest Americans of the century, would have been a great president. He was a very tough guy, but neither one of them as tough as Trump. Trump's stamina and his optimism in the face of adversity is extraordinary. I knew his parents, Fred and Mary Trump, German Scottish stock, like Donald Trump. They were active and vital into their 90s. People ask me, you've known him 45 years. Does he seem different to you? No, actually he seems exactly the same. He has been, as you know, sharp as a tack. These upcoming debates, if they pull off, will really be extraordinary. President Trump has said that previously that President Biden should take a cognitive test, a mental acuity test. This was in the wake of the State of the Union address. And President Trump has offered to take the test himself. This was, I think, based on the erratic performance of President Biden in the State of the Union, which he seemed amped up and then seemed to be let down. It turned the whole thing into a bitter partisan harangue. Congressman, what is your view on whether both candidates, given their age, and certainly Biden's performance, should take a cognitive or mental acuity test?
Well, I'll comment first, Roger, on your comments about his stamina. His stamina is incredible. I mean, this man would go on overseas trips, and we would get on the plane, and we would fly for 13 hours. We'd leave at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'd land, and it'd be 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning where we landed, and the day would be starting over, and we would have a full day ahead of us. And everybody at the end of that day would be spent. The Secret Service, the White House, the military aid, the doctors, everybody around in the senior staff would just be exhausted. And this man would just go and go and go. So his physical stamina is pretty incredible. His cognitive ability is super impressive. I mean, his memory is better than my memory and better than my memory's ever been. And anyone who's been around him knows this. The guy can just, recount in great detail all kinds of stuff that's happened throughout his life. It's really incredible to see. And he has a unique ability that I think people ask me to describe what's special about him. You know, how people get beat up day after day after day, and if you beat them up long enough, it builds on them and it brings them down. And after a while, you can see it just has a cumulative effect on them. It brings them down. You cannot do that to Donald Trump. He goes to bed every night, and every morning when he gets up, he is reset. And he may get spun up about something during the day, but when he goes to bed that night and he gets up the next morning, it's a new day and he's completely reset. He will not let this kind of stuff build on him and bring him down. It's just not his nature. It just doesn't happen to him. But look, I mean, as far as the cognitive test goes, you can look at these two men, and there's no more drastic example. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum. You have one man who's a high performer, who's got incredible energy, who, like you said, is as smart as a tack, sharp as a tack, and you have the guy on the other end who's constantly confused and lost, and he can't speak. I mean, he slurs his speech. He shuffles when he walks. I mean, he looks physically frail, and he sounds horrible. And everybody in the country's had somebody in their family that's gone through this process, whether it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or multi-infarct dementia. I'm not giving the guy a diagnosis, but he's got some kind of cognitive issue related to his age. We've all seen it, and you don't have to be a physician. You certainly don't have to be a physician that was at the White House for 14 years to look at this man now and say something is wrong with him. And I know what it is because I've had a relative, I've had a grandmother, I've had a grandfather, I've had an uncle or an aunt or somebody that's gone through this process. I've seen it. I know what this is, and it gets worse every day. It does not get better. The natural history of this is to progress. So, yes, I think it's perfectly reasonable for us to get cognitive exams on the presidential candidates now. Joe Biden needs to submit to that as president of the United States. I don't know if you remember or not, but whenever President Donald Trump had his physical exam back in 2018, we got a cognitive test done as part of that exam. I oversaw that. And he got a perfect score, 30 out of 30. And I suggested it that we get it. And the reason I suggested that was because the mainstream media was, spinning things up. They didn't like his style. They didn't like his attitude, and they were trying to, say he wasn't mentally fit to be president. And so we got the objective data to prove that he was cognitively not only fit, but cognitively, at the top of his game. And Joe Biden needs to, as far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump set the standard. The precedent has been set. And if we ever had a president that needed a cognitive test, it's Joe Biden. So, yes, I'm fully supporting the call for Joe Biden to get a cognitive test. I've already sent 5 letters to the White House, to his physician and to Joe Biden, demanding, and to his cabinet demanding that he get a cognitive test associated with his physical exam. Those letters have been completely ignored, but the American people are demanding it now as well. And I think that we're to the point now where it's even gone beyond that. People know he's got a cognitive issue. People are wondering what kind of drugs he's on now when he shows up for things like the State of the Union, when he's still pretty cognitively, incapable, but he's wide awake, alert, and just a screaming, angry old man. That's what we saw at the State of the Union. People want to know what's going on there. So now there's a call for drug tests before the debate, and I support that as well, because I do think that he's being given something that this country that we don't know about.
Well, you're absolutely right about the resilience of Donald Trump. He's an amazingly resilient individual. I saw it, in the 80s when I knew him then, and his financial empire was going through problems because the entire economy crashed, but it was particularly rough on real estate, and he lost everything. He'd made multi-millions, perhaps into the billions at that point, but he lost it all, and of course he got it all back. And he was unfazed. He's the toughest negotiator who ever lived. He negotiated with the banks who he persuaded that he was worth more to them alive than dead. He got terrific terms for them, and he rebuilt his business empire. I was there, and I saw the enormous stress of everyone around him, but he was nonchalant and determined, resilient. I see that today. The idea of him being forced to sit in a drafty, cold courthouse in Manhattan, given this farce of a trial, it's an indignity. It's a humiliation. It's meant to be one because this is a politically motivated trial. Congressman Jackson, your thoughts on what's going on right there in Manhattan?
Well, I agree with you, Roger. It is, and honestly, it's an absolute embarrassment to this country. It's a shame. It's a disaster for our judicial system and for our courts to see something like this going on, see them getting away with it. But look, it's the only way that they think they can beat him. They know for sure that they cannot beat this man at the polls, right? If it's a fair election, he will absolutely destroy Joe Biden at the ballot box. They know this. So they're resorting to just trying to damage him before they get to that point. I mean, there's still going to be fraud. There's going to be overwhelming fraud in this election cycle. I don't doubt that. I mean, there was fraud last time, and they'll try to do it again with these unsolicited mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting and stuff in the ballot boxes and all the nonsense that went on last time. They're going to do that, but they are scared. They are scared that they're not going to be able to even fraudulently overcome the vast uprising in this country right now in support of Donald Trump because of the absolute disaster that Joe Biden has been for this country. Joe Biden is destroying this country, and everybody on both sides of the aisle, whether you're Republican or Democrat, regardless of race or gender or anything else out there that they try to make an issue of, people see what's happening to this country, and they are scared, and they look back and they realize that their lives were so much better during Donald Trump than they are during Joe Biden. So we've got apples and apples that we can compare here, and it's not working in Joe Biden's favor. So, yeah, they're going to continue to do this. This trial is an absolute joke. I was there last week. I sit in the courtroom, and I was just disgusted with this judge. I cannot believe this man. I can't stand this man. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was so obvious that he was part of the prosecution. He was not an impartial judge. He was part of the prosecution. Every single time that the Trump lawyers opened their mouth, they would the prosecution would immediately object, and before they could even get the word objection out of their mouth, he would say sustained. And I mean, it was just like he would not let the defense speak. And then when the prosecution got their opportunity to speak, he just sat there quietly and let them say whatever they want. It was so biased, and it was so overwhelmingly obvious that this man is part of the prosecution. I think that the two biggest threats to this country right now, I'm going to be honest with you, the two biggest threats that we have right now are the weaponization of government and election integrity. If we can't get those two things fixed, nothing else in this country matters, Roger.
Look, I went through it myself. In fact, my case was the template, was the test run for this trial, from the unconstitutional gag order that I was subjected to, the refusal of a change of judge, even after the judge made prejudicial comments about me, the refusal of a change of venue out of the bluest part in the country, D.C., where we were going to get a partisan jury, a denial of every reasonable defense was prohibited in pretrial rulings, and of course we later found that there was jury corruption. The forewoman of the jury who said during jury questioning and jury selection that she didn't know who I was and she wasn't familiar with the Russian collusion case, only to find that she had posted on Facebook and Twitter about me and attacks on President Donald Trump, who she said all of his friends are racist. But she had that all in a private setting on both media applications, so my attorneys could not find it when they tried to research each juror. So I have seen this kind of bias up close. This is a partisan witch hunt, if there ever was one, and the government still hasn't been able to decide on one underlying crime. In other words, for these financial transactions that it appears Michael Cohen directed and carried out, for them to be a felony, they have to be pertain to or cover up some underlying crime. And the government has various theories, but they don't have a crime. It is outrageous that the judge will not let the former head of the Federal Election Commission testify as a witness for Trump to say that the FEC investigation and the FEC law found no violation. Folks, if you're just tuned in, I'm getting cranked up, as you can hear. I'm here with Congressman Ronny Jackson of the, I guess is the 13th District of Texas. He is a retired Rear Admiral, served with distinction in Iraq, is a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, the U.S. Navy, but served with the Marine Corps, a man of great honor, and a man who is standing up for our country. His new book, Holding the Line, A Lifetime of Defending Democracy and American Values, Ronny Jackson. This is the Roger Stone Show. We'll be right back with a bit more of Congressman Jackson, so don't go away. And we're back. This is Roger Stone. If you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC Radio. We're here with Congressman Ronny Jackson, who serves in the 13th District of Texas, but it's not his political accomplishments I'm in awe of, although he's in his second term. He served his country with distinction in the military, serving in the U.S. Navy, becoming an admiral, but would go on ultimately to head the White House Medical Unit, where he was the physician for three presidents, those being George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. I know, Congressman Jackson, you write in your book that during your time serving during the Obama administration, you kept your political opinions to yourself. But what was it like to work for Barack Obama?
Well, I'll be honest with you, on a personal level, he was good to me on a personal level. I didn't have any issues with that whatsoever. The family was fine to work for. But obviously, politically, I think that he set the groundwork for what's going on in the Biden administration right now. And I witnessed a lot of it, and during the entire 8 years of the Obama administration, everything that happened, it didn't matter what it was related to identity politics, right? It was straight versus gay, black versus white, rich versus poor, man versus woman. Any way they could figure out to try to divide us and to make you feel like a part of a persecuted minority that was being victimized by everyone else. They tried to do that. And that's what goes on now in the Biden administration, but it's on steroids now. And they tried to be kind of reclusive about it and hide a little bit in the Obama administration. They kind of quietly did it behind the scenes, and they weren't as out in the open with it. But now in the Biden administration, they don't really care who knows. I mean, they're just out in the open. They could care less. They're blatantly racist and, in their approach to so many things in this country right now. They could care less how obvious that is to the American people. But I think that all started in the Obama administration. So I think that those 8 years of the Obama administration did a lot of damage to this country and set the stage for the disaster that we're living through right now.
Congressman, how confident are you that President Trump will retake the White House?
And I'll tell you what, Roger, if it's the least bit fair. Now, I said before, I know there's going to be some fraud, but I feel like there's overwhelming support for the president right now, and I feel like it's just going to be too much for them to fraudulently take away from us. So, I mean, if it were a fair election, I would tell you 110% it is going to happen. It is, but I'll tell you right now, I think that he's coming back. I think he's going to be our next president, despite everything that's happening right now, despite the fact that I know that they're going to go to extremes in the swing states to try to rig the election to the extent they can, despite the fact that they've weaponized every single component of government against him to try to tear him down, to try to keep him from getting on the ballot, to try to keep him from being eligible to run, to try to mar him in any way they can with these trials. Despite all of that, he's going to prevail, and he's going to be our president. And our country needs him back more than anything right now. There's very few people. There's only one person, in fact, that I know of that can do what needs to be done right now to restore this country and to get our country back, and that's Donald Trump. And that's because a lot of stuff you and I talked about in the last segment about what a unique person he is and the characteristics and the capabilities that he brings to the fight that normal people would not bring. And that's what we have to have right now. He is the right man at the right time to restore this country and to get our country back, and it's going to happen.
Going back just to bolster something you said earlier, I find it interesting that one of the great legal fights of all time were over President Richard Nixon's White House tapes, the famous Watergate tapes. He argued that they should not be turned over to the government or made public, that he had released a transcript, but he claimed executive privilege. The Supreme Court ruled against him. Now, Joe Biden's Justice Department is refusing to release the audio of his recording with special counsel Robert Hur. Their argument is they have released a transcript, and that's significant. And they're claiming, guess what? Executive privilege. So I think this just bolsters what you are saying, Congressman, that it's not what he says, it's how he says it. And his agitated attitude, his constantly forgetting what he's saying in the middle of a sentence, his shaking hands with people that don't exist. Again, our guest, Congressman Ronny Jackson, I thank you very much. Again, folks, I commend to you his book, Holding the Line, A Lifetime of Defending Democracy and American Values. His is a uniquely American story. He has served his country with great honor, serving both Republicans and Democrats, but then taking on the task of running for the U.S. Congress. People don't understand. I mean, this man retired as a rear admiral. He could have retired and lived comfortably, but he's chosen to get back in the fight. I was honored to be at a birthday party for him at Mar-a-Lago recently. And I have to say, you need to read this book, folks, because his experiences are absolutely unique. A final question. I find, anecdotally, Congressman, when I go out on the street, people come up to me because they recognize me from politics, and they keep telling, and the number of people telling me they are for Trump is overwhelming, but the number of those people who are African American or Hispanic is disproportional. Now, that's not a scientific sample, but something that I'm experiencing every day. We've seen it in the polls, the president making gains in these crucial communities. Congressman, what's been your experience?
Well, I've had the same experience as you, Roger, especially here in Texas, where you have a large Hispanic population. Hispanics that have never voted as Republican their entire life are pledging now that they are going to support Donald Trump. And the reason is because what's happened to this country has not affected just one race or one religious group or one, gender. It's affected all of us. It's been devastating to all Americans, regardless of those identifiers. And so people are just, they know, they can see firsthand how much better their life was just a few years ago under the leadership of Donald Trump, compared to the absolute disaster that is Joe Biden now. And so this is people, these are people all over the country that want a better life for themselves and for their families. And they realize the only way that's going to happen is if we get Donald Trump back into the White House.
All right. I want to thank Congressman Ronny Jackson of the 13th District of Texas for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show. Congressman, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it and looking forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. I am joined now by Christine Serrano-Glassner. Her husband, Michael, has been a friend of mine of many, many years. In fact, I was Senator Bob Dole's body man before he was, and that's where we met. She is now making a valiant race in New Jersey for the United States Senate. She's been endorsed by President Donald Trump. She has extensive local experience. She served in the Trump administration, in the Small Business Administration, but she's also served as the first woman elected mayor in the borough of Mendham, New Jersey, where she has had a stellar record serving the people of her town. This is a David and Goliath fight in New Jersey, which is a blue state, but might just be trending to President Donald Trump. When you get 100,000 people in Wildwood, well, something seismic is happening. Christine Glassner, thank you for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, thank you for having me. I am so happy to be here with you and all of your listeners.
You know, the president was very forthright in his endorsement of you, which I was very, very pleased to see. You are not the candidate of the New Jersey Republican machine, which really is the party of Chris Christie. Those folks today have to go through the motions of saying they're for Donald Trump because he's definitely going to be our nominee, but they were never for him in the beginning. Now suddenly they're all born-again Trump supporters. Such is politics. But I was really proud to see the president stand up and endorse you, and I was happy to join him in that. Donald Trump Jr., a number of other prominent national conservatives like Dr. Ben Carson and others have joined suit. You are in a David and Goliath fight, but it's one in which I feel that you're going to prevail. So I guess a good place to start is your reaction to the announcement this past Thursday that Donald Trump had been convicted in a Manhattan courtroom of 34 charges when the prosecution never identified any specific crime. What's your thinking?
What's my thinking? I think what's most of America's thinking, and I'm not just talking Republicans, I know a lot of unaffiliated voters and even Democrat voters. I've got a lot of friends who are lawyers who are Democrats, and they think this is a travesty because it sets a very, very horrible example for the United States, absolutely for the New York judiciary system. This is going to end up hurting them. That's my prediction. It's going to hurt the Democrats because it is nothing but pure politics, and people can see through that, and it's an embarrassment for this country. It spells out that this is nothing more than a kangaroo court because the entire thing was tilted towards one political direction. And this is another example of them trying to use the judicial system as an election integrity issue of trying to keep Donald Trump. They tried to keep him from campaigning, and they're trying to keep him out from running for the United States president, and he is going to be our next president. I was so proud, Roger, when he endorsed me. And he endorsed me because he has known me. He's known my husband, and he knows that I am a hard worker. I am a fighter, and I am a woman of courage. I believe in defending and supporting the people in New Jersey. And I also believe, and everybody hears me say this U.S. Senate seat that Bob Menendez did not treat with the respect that he should have is a public service position. And we need to be serving the public. They are our customers, and they deserve better customer service. And that's what I will do. They need better communication. My opponent, who is part of the South Jersey machine, who is a Chris Christie guy, donated to Chris Christie for president, donated against Donald Trump for Gary Johnson in 2016. In other words, basically trying to support Hillary Clinton. He has trashed Donald Trump on his social media, and he is a well-known Democrat supporter, supporting, Senator Cory Booker. What's going to happen in 2 years? Is he going to support him again, or is he going to support the Republican? So what you have is a tried and true New York Democrat who's trying to wear New Jersey Republican clothes, and people are not buying it. They know when he's interviewed, he can't even say Donald Trump's name. He avoids it. Roger, he chickened out from doing a debate with me. He agreed to do the debate, and then a couple days before, he backed out because he told them that I was probably going to leave the race, and he didn't want to encourage me to stay in. I was never leaving this race because I'm in this race for the people of New Jersey, and now I'm in this race to make sure that Donald Trump gets reelected to the White House. Because, Roger, there was a poll that came out, the Emerson poll, just not that many weeks ago, showing that President Trump is only 5 points behind in New Jersey. That poll was maybe 7 weeks ago. I bet that is even narrowed more since then. And then there was another poll in a three-way race because Bob Menendez has his 800 signatures and is going to file to run as an independent. In a three-way race between myself, Bob Menendez, and Andy Kim, I'm only 5 points behind Andy Kim. New Jersey is in play, and New Jersey has 2 winnable seats, many more winnable seats than that, all the way up and down the ballot. But Donald Trump can win New Jersey, and I will be winning this Senate seat in New Jersey, and I need the support of all of the voters.
I know New Jersey extremely well, having run 2 campaigns in the state for President Ronald Reagan, having worked on the 2 campaigns of Thomas J. Kane, perhaps the state's greatest governor. I helped Jeff Bell topple U.S. Senator Clifford Case in the primary there. I've been to all 21 counties. I used to own a home in Margate, New Jersey. That's before I became impoverished by the Mueller investigation. I own no real estate today. My wife's family owns our home through a trust entirely legally. It is extraordinary when you look at this opportunity. There is a precedent in history here. In 1970, U.S. Senator Thomas J. Dodd, a Democrat of Connecticut who had won by a landslide in 1964, came up for re-election. Dodd had not been convicted of any crime, but he had been censured by the U.S. Senate for financial improprieties. He saw that he could not win the Democratic primary, so he filed to run as an independent. The Democratic Party nominated the Reverend Joseph Duffy, who was an anti-war zealot, over the Democrat organization candidate Alphonse Donahue. And Republicans nominated 4th District Congressman Lowell Weicker, a 3-way race. Weicker won that race, was elected the first Republican senator from Connecticut since the 50s because of that Democrat split. Therefore, I predict to you that if Menendez goes through with his independent candidacy, which I think from a legal point of view, to maintain leverage in his upcoming trial, he almost certainly has to do, well, if you win this primary, Christine, you're headed to the U.S. Senate. And that's why this race is worth talking about. Normally, let's be candid, nobody wants the Republican U.S. Senate nomination in a state like New Jersey. But given the coming Trump tidal wave, And the fact that reputable polls in New Jersey show the president only 6 down, and as you point out, that was just weeks ago. I really believe New Jersey's in play, and if you win this primary, which I think you're going to, I do think you're going to the U.S. Senate.
Well, that is my goal, Roger, and I so appreciate your thoughts on that. I know, and I met with the Steve Daines recently, Senator Daines, and he has said to me that this being a 3-way race, the support that's going to come in for this seat will be like no New Jersey has not seen before, because they have the faith, and we have to return a Republican majority to the U.S. Senate for when Donald Trump becomes president again. We know that we have to do that. But what Senator Daines said to me was, we've got to get more than just 51 seats. We have to. And so that makes New Jersey's seat that much more appealing and interesting in terms of a race. And, I've been working hard. I'm not going to stop. This is critical. This is go time now for this state, because we need better representation. We need representation for people that are struggling, that are living paycheck to paycheck, our young people. And I know this has been on your show before. Not only can they not afford, our young adults, they can't afford to buy homes in New Jersey. They're not even able to afford to rent apartments anymore. It's become extremely difficult, and we cannot afford to lose those young adults to move away to other states. We need their vibrancy in this state because it's such a great state. We have everything here in New Jersey. You know that, Roger. You've been to all 21 counties. We've got the mountains. We've got the Jersey Shore, which is one of our greatest assets, which Murphy is trying to ruin with the wind turbines. We've got lakes. We've got hiking. We've got farmland. We have it all. We have cities. You just can't beat New Jersey. And so we need folks to continue their residency here and not leave the state. But they will only do that if New Jersey becomes more affordable, if New Jersey becomes better represented down in Washington, so that all of these dollars that are going down to D.C. has to either stop and be reduced or come back to the state to help with so many of the issues we have. Like flooding is a big issue here, both in the north and down at the Jersey Shore. We can't just receive benefits from the federal government when we have a disaster. We need a steady program to help with our infrastructure needs, our highways, our bridges, and we need to see more of that here in New Jersey. We contribute much more than we get back. So this is so much of the reason why I'm running, and it's for the people.
I'm a little behind the curve on this issue, but I do know that the courts not long ago knocked down the so-called party lines. For those who are not in politics, let me try to explain this. The Republican and Democratic county organizations in the past have had the ability to give their endorsed candidate a superior ballot position where they're designated as the official endorsed candidate of the local organization. Now, it's not that challengers have never won off the line. It's not that challengers, however, have never won without the line, but it is an advantage. Judge knocked the lines out for Democrats. Christine, what is the status of these of the line, the organization designation on the Republican side?
So I think because anybody in New Jersey knows that when Governor Murphy first ran for office, he went around and people basically claimed that he bought the lines, which meant that he wrote big checks to each of the county committees or individuals there, contributions, right, donations, and secured the lines for himself. My opponent essentially did the same thing. It's my understanding, people have been passing around a report from the New Jersey Election Commission showing all of the contributions that he made shortly before these conventions took place. And so each county, not every county, but each of the 21 county has their own process. Many of them have these conventions. And when you win that county convention, you are placed in this special column with all of their preferred candidates. You said yourself, it doesn't mean it's a guarantee. Two of the South counties decided not to do that. They decided to go with what's known as a block ballot vote. And so names are picked out of a hat, or columns are picked out of a hat. Names and folks were just, sorted into the ballot accordingly. Up north, I won most of the counties. My opponent won many of them down south. But again, you can see the correlation between buying these counties. I've seen this report that people are sending around. I am hearing from voters down south. I'm down south. I'm campaigning hard. I've got a lot of folks that are supporting me because they're not satisfied with what happened with this process. They felt that it wasn't the way it should have happened. Some of these chairs will say to you, this is what the people wanted. That's not what the people wanted. It's how they influenced county committee members. The only people that vote at the convention are either club members or committee members. This is not representational of all of the voters. When Donald Trump endorsed Christine Serrano-Glassner for U.S. Senate, so many of these South Jersey voters are dedicated to Donald Trump and want him in office. And they know that he needs to have on the ballot the person that he has selected, because he knows that I will work very hard to make sure that he gets and wins New Jersey, which is one of the things he told me when I saw him that he wants. He knows we can win New Jersey, and he wants to win New Jersey. My opponent has been anti-Trump. He doesn't have the trust of the people, and this is why they're not going to vote for him. So he will definitely win, because people that aren't paying attention, don't know who the candidates are, a lot of those people will just vote down that line, but there are a lot of the people that will not, especially the folks, any of them, that were either watching that rally or were in attendance of that rally. And you said so yourself. There was 100,000 people there, and this endorsement went out on live TV. A lot of times, Roger, the president, when he does his endorsement, it's just through a tweet. He held this endorsement until that rally because he knew that that was going to help bring out voters. And it was going to tell New Jersey, I believe in New Jersey. This is what Donald Trump was saying, and I know that we can win this state. And so that's the goal, and people have to pay attention. I want to make sure they come to my website, which is Christine4NJ.com, and come visit us and take a look at, what we stand for, and get all your neighbors and your friends out to vote. We need that this year more than ever. We need to make sure that we're delivering. And it doesn't have to just be Republicans. Remember, in New Jersey, we have unaffiliated voters. They can walk into the booth on Election Day, and they can vote Republican. And then they can unregister as a Republican voter. It's very, very simple. We need everybody to get out, and I'm asking for people's vote, because we need to do this, not just for New Jersey, but we need to make sure that we get Donald Trump reelected. And this is one of the ways we can do this.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the endorsement of Donald Trump trumps any Republican county organization endorsement. Also point out that there's far more votes in the North than there are in the South. When you break down the primary votes, I think there are 65+% of the primary vote in the northern part of the state, and the rest in the lower part of the state. Christine, people don't really realize how incredibly expensive it is to run a campaign for the U.S. Senate, particularly in a state where New York and Philadelphia dominate the television markets. There are essentially, really, other than cable, no New Jersey stations. Many, many, many people in New Jersey listening to 77 WABC radio, I'm happy to say. Tell us one more time how folks can go to your campaign site and help you out.
Please come visit us. You can find us at Christine, that's a CH, 4NJ, that's FOR.com, Christine4NJ.com. Come visit us. You can donate right there. It's a simple donation button. You can sign up to volunteer and help. You can sign up to get our emails, and you can see all of our issues. We're adding more every day. I've got to actually get a couple more added today. Roger, how campaigning is a very, very busy time, so we're just juggling it all and making sure that we're getting as much information out to the voters while getting me out to the voters. So I really appreciate folks coming and taking a look. Oh, and I almost forgot, sign up for our social media. That's the best way you can keep informed on what we're doing.
All right. I want to thank our special guest today, Christine Serrano-Glassner, Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate in the upcoming June 4th New Jersey primary. Here's an open invitation for her opponent. If he'd like to appear here on the Roger Stone Show, I'd be happy to accommodate him. I have a feeling he won't take me up on that, but I make the invitation in good faith. Christine, thank you very much for joining us. And folks, you want to hang on, because when we come back, yes, it's Mrs. Stone's, that's my mother's, famous recipe for eggplant parmesan. We'll be right back.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
And we're back. Everybody is familiar with the adage of Napoleon, who said an army travels on its stomach. It's the same way in politics. And, well, I admit to being a foodie. As folks who listen to the Roger Stone Show know that I'm half Italian and half Hungarian. So those are the dishes, the ethnic dishes I grew up with. I'm very fussy about the quality of my food. And I began some weeks ago, from the very beginning of the show, laying out some of the more important recipes that I had collected from my mother. She collected them from her mother, who of course collected them from her mother, my great-grandmother. And they have been shared within my family, but they've never been shared with the people. And in some cases, they are unique. So I'm working on putting together a 77 WABC radio cookbook of all my recipes. It's turning on to be a more formidable task than I had anticipated. But the feedback on my website and on my email has been really, really extraordinary. And I know that from time to time people want to talk about something besides politics, and well, what better to talk about than food? I did get an email message from Salvatore in the Queens, who asks, why do you talk so much about pizza on your WABC radio show? It's very simple. The implication, of course, is that somehow the references to pizza are some kind of coded language that refers to child sex trafficking. Nonsense. I talk here about pizza, well, because I love great pizza. I love great New York pizza. And I've talked about some of the greats. John's of Bleecker Street, Tantano's, the famous Spumoni Gardens, and so on. Pizza is like sex. Even when it's bad, well, it's still pretty good. And I argue with my friends as to whether New Haven or New York is the pizza capital of the world. There's a lot to be said for New York pizza. I like it thin. Some of my friends advocate Chicago-style pizza. I'm going to be in Chicago in a couple weeks, speaking for the Conservative Caucus there. But to me, the Chicago style is, well, it's mostly bread. I'm already watching my waistline, so I've got to take my pizza and my pasta in moderation, but to all things a moderation. Anyway, here is my mother's recipe for eggplant parmigiana. You need 4 large eggs, 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of olive oil. You need 2 eggplants, the ends trimmed, cut into 1/4-inch thick rounds. You need some high-quality mozzarella cheese, and you need some pomodoro sauce. I've given the pomodoro sauce recipe here on The Roger Stone Show a couple times. You can email me if you didn't get it, but you don't want sauce out of a jar. That literally is not done. So you're going to need all of those ingredients. In a large bowl, beat together the eggs, the flour, the salt with 1/2 cup of water until smooth. Now heat the olive oil in a large saucepan over medium heat until it sizzles. Dip each of the eggplant slices into the batter and then fry them until golden brown, usually about 3 minutes aside. Transfer all the eggplant to a paper towel to drain, and this is important, to cool. Then take the eggplant in a deep Pyrex dish, put a layer of pomodoro sauce, a layer of eggplant, a layer of mozzarella, to be topped by another layer of pomodoro sauce, another layer of eggplant, and another layer of mozzarella until you're at the top of your Pyrex dish. Now pop that baby in the oven for anywhere around 30 minutes, watching it carefully. No part in the process do you want to burn the eggplant when you're frying it, nor do you want to burn it when you are finishing it by baking it. It's very, very simple, but it could be among my late father's favorite recipes. There you have it, my very own family recipe for eggplant parmigiana. Keep your eyes peeled for the 77 WABC cookbook. It really is coming, folks. I work a little bit on it every day, whether it is the Hungarian stuffed cabbage, whether it is my famous Sunday gravy. We won't get into the debate today about gravy versus sauce. They're all great, and you'll be able to see them all. I'm very, very proud to be a member of the 77 WABC radio family. I'm happy that you have chosen to tune in on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Make sure you catch us next week on the Roger Stone Show. Again, if you're not in the place I grew up, the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, where you can hear us at 770 on the AM dial, you can always find us at WABCRadio.com, where we're live streaming worldwide, including as many as 173 countries around the globe. So tune in. Don't miss any of the great programming, whether it's talk or entertainment, here on 77 WABC. And right now, please don't go away, because my good friend Joe Piscopo will be right along with Sundays with Sinatra.
These days, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries. And with that, we sent away good jobs and our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make all kinds of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs in towns and cities across the country. And jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.